Going to go ahead and call this July 20th, 2020 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks for attending this evening. Just an agenda change that came this morning. We did remove the conditional use permit for Sweet Peaks Ice Cream Incorporated from the agenda this evening. That was a request of Sweet Peaks. We will go ahead and start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And Dana, why don't you go ahead and do this tonight? Thank you, Dana. We'll move on to our communications from the public. We do have one. Are we good, Jake? Frank, can you check those other mics and just make sure they're off, please? They're off? Okay. Thanks, Jake. We're on to item 3 of the agenda, which is our communications from the public. We do have one public hearing scheduled for tonight under item 6A, so if you're here to speak to that request, please wait until I call that public hearing. Otherwise, if you have anything to share with the council, now would be your opportunity. Your name and address for the record, please, when you approach the podium. Any public comment tonight? Not seeing any, I'll stay with the audience. Any volunteer board reports? How about the council? Not seeing any, we'll move on to item 5 of the agenda, which is our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the meeting minutes from July 6th, our regular session, or I can have a motion for approval, please. Frank.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Rebecca, corrections.
Michelle has these, but page 23, under where it begins, Gerlinda Waters, add S to masks. Page 24, add L to help. And page 24, Bruce Booty's last name is B-O-O-D-Y, not B-O-O-T-Y. Thank you, Michelle. You did great last week.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments on the consent agenda? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously, which brings us quickly to our first and one and only public hearing, item 6A, which is a consideration of a request from Pamela Secrease for a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment located at 909 Kalispell Avenue, and the property is zoned WR2, which is our 2-family residential. And I apologize if I pronounced your last name incorrectly. Hillary, I did.
Good evening, councilors. So this accessory apartment would be located behind an existing single-family residence and above a new garage. It would be constructed as part of the project. The garage would include space for 2 passenger vehicles plus an RV, and the apartment would be over the passenger vehicle portion of the garage. The surrounding land uses are all residential with the same WR2 zoning, and that's of course intended for 1- and 2-family homes in an urban setting. The growth policy designates the land as urban, which is consistent with the zoning. The project was noticed to the adjacent landowners, to the advisory agencies, and a notice was put in the paper. We did receive one comment from a neighbor who had concerns about the location of the property line, and that's something that will be confirmed at the time of the building permit. The project was reviewed using the conditional use permit criteria from the zoning regulations. Because the garage will be larger than 600 square feet, the entire structure must meet the primary setbacks, which are 10 feet from the side and 20 feet from the rear. 3 off-street parking spaces are required, and there appears to be enough space, and that will be again confirmed at the time of the building permit. The driveway access right now from the alley is not paved, and that will be required as part of the conditions. Overall, the proposed use complies with the zoning district and conforms to the development standards for accessory apartments. I think as far as other findings of interest, the parcel is over 8,000 square feet. The maximum lot coverage is 40%, and it looks as though they'll be able to fit both the garage structure and the house on there and meet that minimum, or the maximum, sorry. The lot is served by all city sewer, or city services, and similar structures and uses are surrounding, so it appears to be compatible with the neighborhood. At the June Planning Board meeting, staff recommended approval of the conditional use permit subject to 8 conditions, some of which include the fact that it must meet the primary building setbacks, the driveway must be paved, the property owner must do a deed restriction so that the apartment can't be rented unless the owner is living on the primary residence, and of course no short-term rentals are allowed. Planning Board adopted the staff report with findings of fact and unanimously approved the request. And if you have any questions, please ask away.
Thanks, Hillary. Any questions for Hillary before we hold our public hearing? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 6A of the agenda, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Is the applicant present, and do you have anything you would like to add to Hillary's report? And name and address for the record, please.
It's Pam Seacrease, and it's 909 Kalispell Avenue. My children live in the front house. When I bought the property, I was manager at the apartments, and it was a requirement to live on site. So I bought the property back in 2013. Since then, I am no longer working for the property management, and I'm too old to live with my kids. So I am living in my RV behind my house. I do go south for 3 months, January, February, March, and I need a base to stay. Right now I got stuff in storage, and so it would be for me. And then my kids, they've got 3 children, which by the time they get through college, they will be 8-10 years from now. So it's not going to be rented by anybody but me. And basically, it is so that I can live there. And then once I get too old, then I'm going to move into the house, and the kids are going to move into the apartment. I had the place surveyed back, I want to say it was 2014, because the neighbor on the north had came in and flipped that property, and they put the fence on my property line. And so we did have it surveyed by a legal survey, and so it is on county record. My property lines are exact. It did go a little bit over on the neighbors, and so that's probably where they're talking about. I have no interest in going and moving the fences over. I'm trying to make it as efficient as possible, where as I get older, I don't, it's harder to take care of a big property. One thing that came out in the meeting was they were worried about, water, flooding, rainwater flooding the others, and I assured them that I would have rain barrels on every corner because I can't afford water to water my plants. So I think that I've followed everything that is in the guidelines. If there's any other questions, I just want you to know where I'm coming from.
Great. Thanks, Pam. Appreciate your comments tonight and for attending. Any public comment this evening on this item? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Andy.
I would move that we approve WCUP 20-10 findings of fact in the staff report, subject to the 8 conditions as transmitted and recommended to us by the planning board from their June 18 meeting.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Pam, for coming. Good luck with the project. We'll move on to item 7A, which is consideration to award the water treatment plant construction contract to Swank Enterprises in the amount of $9,327,000, and this is on page 130 of your packet. Great to see this coming forward tonight. Craig, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, council. Okay. So as we talked about a little bit earlier this evening during our work session, the city does operate a water treatment plant up on the hill. We take water from both the Haskell series of creeks as well as Whitefish Lake, which is treated and put out to distribution. While there are currently 4 1 million gallon filters up at the plant, DEQ has rated our plant at 3 million gallons per day, which requires 1 filter be offline. Although this is only a concern for a few days during the busy irrigation season or peak demand season, DEQ has required the city to apply for a deviation, as we have gone over that 3 million gallons on a few occasions in the past. This deviation is really only a temporary solution, and we've known for quite some time that this water plant expansion is necessary. So we began last year by selecting an engineer to move us forward with this process. The city did select Morrison and Merrily to design and oversee the construction and all of the elements that will be needed to expand the capacity at the plant. The projects, in addition to the additional filters, include the expansion of the Whitefish Lake intake pump station, the installation of a parallel water main from the treatment plant down Reservoir Road, as well as the extension of the city's sanitary sewer up to the plant to deal with our backwash. Plans were finalized for the project back in March, and we did advertise the project last month in June. It was advertised in the Daily Interlake on June 7th, the 21st, and July 5th. Bids were received a couple weeks ago on July 9th and read aloud, and we received 3 bids. The original estimate for this group of projects was between $10 and $12 million, which includes engineering. Upon completion of the design work a few months ago, the final cost estimate for the construction was $9.7 million. The low bid on the project last week was Swank, or excuse me, on July 9th was Swank Enterprises at $9,327,000. This bid was about 7% below our final engineer's estimate and about 2% lower than the next lowest bid, which was RSCI at $9,515,300. And the third bid was Yukon at $11,875,000. So based on the final bid results, the total project cost is going to come in at just over $12 million, about $12.3 million. That includes design engineering, construction engineering, all of the fees necessary for bonding. There's a contingency in there, some grant and loan administration services, et cetera. We anticipate we'll pay for this project with an $11 million loan from SRF, which Ben just told me we received approval for today. How ironic. And then about $1.3 million in city reserves. So based on that information, the staff does recommend that we award this project to Swank Enterprises in the amount of $9,327,000.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report or the bid process? Nice to see the bid come under the engineer's estimate for once. That's
Absolutely,
great.
yeah.
Good work. No questions? We'll need a motion awarding the contract to Swank Enterprises, please.
I'll make a motion to award the water treatment plant project to Swank Enterprises in the amount of $9,327,000.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? Real quick, Craig, timeline.
So we're actually, assuming this motion does go through, we're going to start next month.
Nice.
We'll be removing pavement from Reservoir Road, and Northwestern Energy has quite a bit of work to relocate a gas main, which will start probably about the middle of August. And then Swank will mobilize to start getting the water main and the sewer in right after that. So it'll be busy.
That's great. Good. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
You have Dana's written report enclosed with your packet. Do you have any questions for Dana? Steve?
I do, Dana. I noticed that you mentioned something about the availability of non-symptomatic testing, and I know that the county health department has suspended all non-symptomatic testing since the 17th, so just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Steve. I was going to give an update on that for everyone. We did receive notice from the Flathead Community Health Center that they can no longer find a lab to process the tests. And my understanding is there is a supply chain issue with the reagent as well. And so at this point, Whitefish is the first one to be hopefully be brought back on should the availability of testing and labs be available. Us and West Glacier, being that we are the resort communities that the governor really wanted to direct these testing sites for. So unfortunately, we do not have our asymptomatic testing site no longer, and even symptomatic testing sounds like statewide it has slowed down on the response time from 5 to 7 days. So I think as testing increases, we need to be prepared for just delay in those results.
Thanks, Dana. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I do. Okay. Just recently, last week, I did speak with the Flathead City County Health Department about our ordinance and the governor's directive and how that enforcement might look. And we've come up to working together, which is really great. The county is willing to take on whatever help we need. I know that they're overwhelmed with questions and complaints. And so we've been working through ours here at the city. We've had, I'm going to say roughly 10 to 12 complaints so far, which I actually am pretty pleased with, considering what it could actually have been. This weekend, there was an incident, though, at one of our local grocery stores. So I'm getting ready to issue a letter, and I thought if you don't mind, since we are getting out probably a little earlier than normal, to read this letter for the record, and that so you're aware of what's going to go out. The city is aware of an incident involving the use of masks at a local grocery store this past weekend that required a response from the Whitefish Police Department. While there are differing opinions about the requirements to wear masks, we ask that people be kind and respectful to one another. The city of Whitefish would like to provide some clarification on face covering and mask use in general public settings, as well as the complaint process. City ordinance and the governor's directive do not provide for criminal or civil citations for individuals who do not wear a face covering or mask. If you see someone without a mask in a public setting, please ask to speak with the store manager rather than trying to self-enforce the mask requirements. You may also file a complaint through the City of Whitefish website, which is cityofwhitefish.org/COVID complaint, or through the City County Health Department. Please remember that there are certain circumstances in which employees and patrons do not have to wear a mask or face covering, such as children under 5, those with physical or mental disabilities who cannot tolerate masks, for which no documentation is required, those dining or drinking while seated in a restaurant or bar, those actively exercising, and those in private offices, provided social distancing can be maintained. Citizens should not call 911 or non-emergency dispatch about non-compliance with the face covering regulations. Our police officers are not responsible for the enforcement. If an individual refuses to leave a business after being asked by an employee, it becomes a trespassing issue, and the business can involve law enforcement at that time. The same goes for other altercations between citizens or emergencies. Thank you for helping slow the spread of COVID-19, and remember to stay clean, careful, and connected, as well as show courtesy, consideration, and civility while we work together. Please set aside your conflicting opinions and remember that we are working to protect our most vulnerable citizens and keep our businesses open. And that's from me. So I just wanted to provide clarification on the when you might see people without masks on. And those are a lot of the complaints that we are getting. And a lot of those complaints, we talk to the businesses, and they do have mechanisms in place. It's just that there are those individuals that might not be able to wear a mask that are walking through, say that you might see one person in a produce section. we do have some that are valid complaints, and we are following up with those businesses actively. And I'm happy to say for Whitefish, it's only a very small few. And so thanks to all the businesses for everything that they're doing and stepping up to the plate. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Dina. Anything else to report on that you didn't cover?
Not this evening.
Great, thanks. We'll move on to item 9, communications from the council, and we'll start with item 9A, which will be resolution 20-20, a resolution establishing and adopting annual goals for the city, and this stems from our work session from 2 weeks ago. Any comments regarding our goals list? I know, Steve, I don't believe you were at the meeting, but what's in front of you is essentially a compilation of both staff and council goals that we reviewed and approved at that meeting. If you have anything you'd like to discuss or add, now would certainly be the opportunity. Good, okay. We'll need a motion adopting our goals then for the city, and that'll be resolution 20-20. Rebecca?
I make a motion to approve council goals 20-20.
Resolution 20-20?
Sorry, resolution 20-20.
Thanks, Rebecca. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous. Michelle? Move on to item 9B of a letter and a request from AltaViews LLC to a one-year extension of time for the second payment in the amount of $249,000 of the cash in lieu for affordable housing, again related to the AltaViews development just south of town. I'll open it up for discussion. Steve?
I just wonder if there's a more of a middle of the road kind of solution than just saying you have one more year to do this. Seems like we could get something from them now and then give them a year to get the rest, or potentially push it back 6 months. I don't know. I don't like the idea of extending it out an entire year. The impact to our community has already been done with the building, and you know the impact there. The reason that the fee is there is because of the impact to our community. So, wondering if there's a middle ground we could go for, rather than just say yes, we'll accept 1 year.
What's the basis for their request, Dana, if you don't mind, just for the public's benefit as well? Because I do believe Steve's correct in the fact that they're on the final phase of build-out of that development.
So Angie might know more than I do, but my understanding is that they are not selling as they had anticipated. So they're asking for a delay in the final payment. I would remind council that in our agreement for the snow lot, we did plan for these funds to be used and provided to the housing authority. That being said, you know, when will construction begin, and we have other funds on hand. You know, I would not recommend going out to July personally because of that. We were saving interest costs for that housing project, but again, that's up to the council. But Angie, is there anything more you want to add?
Yeah, just to give a little, I guess, a little bit of background. AltaViews is owned by Mark Panastini. They had an original PUD before he owned it. Those developer had agreed to 10 affordable units, and Mark agreed to the same thing as a condition to his PUD. We had some conversations with him prior to final plat and was involved in those, as well as city staff. And ultimately, we kind of decided that what they were offering for affordable housing wasn't necessarily something that the city wanted, because the price points, although affordable by Whitefish standards, really wasn't what the housing authority or the city were looking for. We had an affordable housing agreement that was entered into prior to final plat, which AltaViews agreed to build the 10 units unless council agreed to a cash in lieu structure. You guys did that. They made one payment of $249,000, and then COVID hit. My understanding, at least from his attorney, is just times are tough, and you know, construction slowed down, sales slowed down. If you were agreeable to even postponing the payment, I would suggest that you guys made it conditional on the city entering into an addendum to that affordable housing agreement with AltaViews so that we have something in writing. So, that's my thoughts.
Frank.
Mr. Mayor, just, I appreciate the request, and I'm not offended by it at all. And I understand it, given the circumstances, I guess. At the same time, we set a pretty high bar for a development that was coming through here not a month ago, where once the impact to the city was felt, we felt like the money should be paid. And I kind of agree with Steve that the impact of the city of not having that affordable housing is now. I understand times are tough. It's tough on everybody. It's tough on our affordable housing stock as well. And there'll be a real cost to the city if we don't get that money in a timely fashion, given what we're planning to do with the snow lot. I would be amenable to some discussion of delay of some kind, but it would seem to me that time is money, as Mr. Panasini well knows. So if he's going to delay payment, I think he should be paying us some interest on that delayed payment. That seems only fair. And so I would be amenable to a discussion on that level, but I don't think we'll go out to next July, not without what amounts to a payment plan that would be paid off at the end of July, would be my thought.
Okay. Rebecca? Thanks, Frank.
I have a question for Angie. Way out of the box, but Angie, have you ever heard of doing a trade, like we could get an apartment, like a affordable housing unit in exchange for the fee? Like if sales are low and and they're not going to go for what they were originally selling, but now there might be one available for $249. Is that something? Is that like not? Well, I just thought I'd ask because we're trying to get affordable housing too.
Yeah, Rebecca, I think the price points that we were looking at originally in the affordable housing agreement, what they agreed to build, and Ben, you can correct me if I was wrong, you were involved in those conversations, were about $249 to $250. And I think at that time, the city and the housing authority felt like that's really not what we're looking for when the units themselves or the market rate units themselves are so closely placed. So, you know, I think that it's not a bad idea at all, but I just think what they were selling for wasn't really what the kind of housing stock that the city was actually looking for. And I don't know if that's still the case. I really don't know what the market is doing. I've heard that, you know, the market is actually pretty good right now because people want to buy here. So that's my thoughts.
So it's not a possibility to negotiate that in exchange for the cash in lieu?
Well, I think if they, you know, pursuant to the affordable housing agreement, either they can build the units, and I think those were priced at about $250,000, or they can provide the cash in lieu. Now, could they provide some cash in lieu and build some units? I mean, I think that's a conversation we could have with them. Again, you know, I'm not sure that's the kind of stock that the housing authority is really looking for right now. So, but I can't speak for them.
Steve?
Maybe Dave can answer this question. Could you refresh my memory? Are these condos or are they townhomes? Okay, thank you.
Rebecca, I think the other point that Dana made was, given the deficit for the build-out of the snow lot, we were relying on this cash payment in lieu to help, you know, fund the snow lot development. But not a bad question. Ben?
Maybe, Dave, do you know how many of these are built and how many are left?
Actually, I'm not quite sure on those numbers. What the percentage is, my guess is it's probably about a third completed, but I'm not really sure how far. I have no real answer for that because I haven't been tracking it.
Just if I could offer an opinion as having been involved in this, I thought the payment 1 year later was the extension when this was initially agreed. I mean, I thought it was initially agreed as an amount, and then after some back and forth, we finally got to half up front and half a year later. So this, to me, feels like a second extension.
That is the case too, Dana, isn't that correct?
I have
believe so. Angie, do you think it's not, is that what the original agreement was? But I would say that generally, we would have probably asked for the full amount up front. And again, from my perspective, for the housing authority's needs, nothing past December. They're gonna have to start engineering here shortly, and December might even be pushing it, but I don't know. Do you feel it's a second? It could be viewed as a second.
When is it technically due, Dana? The balance?
It's due by July 31st of this month.
So I don't know that it was really, we'd expected it to come up front and the developer to ask for it to come in 2 separate payments, and you folks had agreed to that. And how the affordable housing agreement reads is, unless the city council approves cash in lieu in a certain structure. So the structure you folks approved was 1 payment last year and then 1 payment by the end of this month. So
Which he had requested in writing, I believe.
I believe you're right, yes.
Rebecca?
What about just giving him 2 more months? And then we'd have it in time for the snow lot.
You can always put that out as a motion and we'll debate from there.
Well, it's kind of more, it's a little over my pay grade, but okay, I'll put it out there. I would like to make a motion that we extend the cash in lieu payment for 2 months for this project.
Is there a second to the motion? And the motion does fail for lack of a second. Am I seeing any interest or momentum in offering this extension? If not, I would like a motion on the table to deny the request. So it's part of the public record. Rebecca?
Make the motion to deny the request for an extension on Alta View's second payment of $249,000.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion on the motion. Steve?
I just have a question. What happens if he doesn't pay? We end up in court with them?
Yeah, I imagine if he doesn't pay, you'll be in court with him for a couple of years.
Okay, and how does that help us get the money for the snow lot?
I don't know that it does.
What do we pull the CUP because he didn't pay? Or it's a PUD, right?
It's a PUD. I don't know that we would pull the PUD. I think our relief would be to assume over the affordable housing agreement.
And to that end, and not to go into a bloody discussion, if we prevailed in that action, we would get our attorney's fees and interest on the unpaid amounts. Again, interest these days is not that high, but as I said earlier, I could consider extending and making a payment plan where we get all of our money by year's end or something else if that helped them. But I'm not disposed to go a year, and I'm not disposed to do anything that's going to damage our cash flows that we're going to need to provide the affordable housing that this facility did not. So I'm comfortable with the motions that's been made, but as I said, if it goes down, I would entertain something else, but not much longer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve? Thanks, Frank.
Thanks. Dana, how much do we need? How much are we counting on all 249 for the? We are. Okay, that's all.
Further comments on the motion? Andy?
Yeah, I'm inclined to support the motion in part because of the high fee that we did extract for the project out on Highway 93. I think we were pretty adamant about when we collected that money, and we've already given them a longer period of time than we're allowing for those folks. And if they're willing to come back with some other option, as Frank said, I think we could obviously entertain that, but I think they should know that 1 more year with no payment is not an option at all with this council. I mean, I'm more than comfortable to send that message, and if they come back with another offer, then we can entertain that, but until that time, and I don't think it's our job to come up with what that offer is, so.
Further comments on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously. Michelle. And finally, we'll move on to item C. You have a letter from Jeff and Susie Elliott. I believe Jeff was at our meeting 2 weeks ago regarding the Alpine Theater project production of Moana located in the neighborhood in the vicinity of 10th Street and Park Avenue. Dana, anything else to add from the city's angle on this?
Thank you. So I had spoke with Jeff prior to the event and, explained to him, he said he'd be fine making it through the weekend. Clearly, he wasn't happy with the 3 or 4 different times that I spoke with him. But we have been in touch with ATP, and they are no longer going to be using that site. Does look like they're planning to potentially use Memorial Fields. We'll wait for that special event permit to come through for us to approve that. But they have been noticed that no longer is a suitable site for them, so we've addressed it.
Great. Thanks, Dana. Appreciate that. Any comments on the letter from the council? Okay, we'll wrap up tonight. Steve, would you have anything you'd like to share tonight under comments?
No, nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Frank?
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Ben?
Nothing from me either. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Andy?
Michelle, can you come up here? The Sustainable Tourism Master Plan Committee did meet today, and unfortunately, my day went down the toilet pretty quickly, and I was not able to attend, but Michelle did. And if she could just give us a little update. There's some dissension in the committee from members that I've spoken with about whether or not we have something that is actually actionable. I think there's a lot of data and there's a lot of 146 pages of information. Don't know that there's a lot of plan there as part of the argument from some of the committee members, and I know they were going to talk about that today. And so, Michelle, just kind of quick update if you could, please.
Yes, so we do plan on coming to work session at the next meeting, August 3rd. There is a lot of data that is in that plan, but the consultants do feel that there is some actionable items there that are pointed out in one chapter. But I think it's just it's a unique plan, and we're all kind of thinking the same thing. So I think we're going to come to you guys. There's a standing committee that they're proposing for us to do to help with those actionable plans. So we're moving forward to try to approve that plan.
Thank you, thank you. That's kind of what I figured we were going to do, but I just want to check and make sure. And so I think my counsel to the council would be, when we get that plan and go through it, is feedback to the committee is really going to be important as to whether or not we think we've got something we can work with and is going to serve this community and ultimately do what we want it to do, and look at it with an eye of, okay, maybe we could add a little something in there. I know Kate's run out of time. Kate McMahon has been the consultant on the project, and like all of our projects like that, they run out of hours, and there you go. So anyway.
They've put in a lot more hours than
They've
what
put in
they
a lot
should have.
more hours, yeah.
Yeah,
A lot
they've
more
done a
hours.
really good job.
So, but anyway, look at it that way. Now, Craig, you were there too today, so.
Yeah, it was an interesting conversation today because it's clearly a tough time to be talking about a tourism plan, and especially one that's never come before council before. But I will say that Kate McMahon and Lorraine Roach have done a really good job with this plan, and it was a tricky one all around. But we did talk about the motion that was made of the committee. I think it was back in March when the committee recommended to take it to the work session, and we did uphold that motion at the meeting. I know there were a few members that didn't think it was ready yet, but we feel like it's a pretty good work product, and it's worth getting something on the record and moving forward with it. That plan, I believe, was included in a packet back in March for a work session that was canceled. So we'll resend that to you guys tomorrow morning, so you have it well in advance of the work session. But there will be a few changes, mostly grammatical and punctuation and stuff, that will be updated next week. But we'll make sure you have the link to the last one that was sent out a few months ago. That's it.
Thank you. Other than that, I just wanted to thank everybody in Whitefish for they seem to be doing a pretty good job with masks. I think everybody's stepped up really well. A lot of places that didn't, did right away, and that was really good to see. And certainly want to thank the governor for taking the action and backing us up and backing up other communities in the state that are facing a lot of the same things that we are, because as we're all out and about, we know it's busy right now, like crazy busy, and so it's important, and so thank everybody in the community.
Thanks, Andy. Rebecca?
Just a few things. First, I wanted to thank Angie and Dana, Michelle, and Mayor Mulfeld. I was going to call you John, and then I forgot
You can call me
to
John.
be formal, but for just holding us all together through the last few weeks. With all that testimony, it was a lot of information to process, a lot of divergent opinions, a lot of science to think about, and so you guys are rock stars. So really, thank you for doing all of that. I did do some little surveys before we went into the mandate, and I have to say our businesses did fantastic. They really did in a very short time, preparing, getting masked. Even one of the newer restaurants even put in a second sink for hand washing, and so people really, I would give them an A for trying to prepare a safe interior space for everybody. And so it's been nice to see how many people are really trying to integrate masks, because we're going to be using them for at least probably 6 months to a year minimum, and it's a new skill for everybody. One thing I'm recommending for people that work in masks all day is that you might change them out every 2 to 3 hours, which is what's required in China. And if you're an employee and the mask doesn't feel right to the fit of your face, ask your employer if you can obtain your own masks too, because they fit differently in different ways, and breathability is really important. And then the other thing is, remember, if someone's not masked, you really don't know why. So they might have a physical ailment that you need to accommodate because they might have a disability. So remember to step back from that person. Don't make it all about them. You change your behavior so that they have a space. And hopefully people will remember that you don't have to engage if someone's disagreeable or not doing what you think they should. You just protect your own space, and that's how we're going to get through this. The other thing is we don't allow people to leave personal belongings in public space anymore. So I live down by the footbridge, and I have a whole basket full of things that I've been collecting. So if anybody is missing anything, I've washed them, and I'm going to donate them to one of the thrift stores. I don't want anybody picking them up because COVID still is on the surfaces of things, so I do it safely. And just remember, if you're leaving things around, it's not really good at this point. We have laws around that as well. And trying to think if there's any other helpful tips. Oh, new vaccines are coming out, which is exciting. And I think we have to be very careful, but I think the science is really coming along quickly, which is really nice to see. But do your best. It's a very dangerous disease to get, and thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca, for the comments. I have nothing further tonight. Dana, from staff, all good? We are adjourned. Thanks.